Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning, wherever you're watching. It could be morning, it could be noon, it could be evening, because this is YouTube. Watch it whenever you want. No particular time, but it's good to be back. It's good to see all of you for another week. It's been a busy week this week, hasn't it, Nate?
It sure has.
A lot has gone on. We've got Ben Carson, the Pope, John Boehner in the news this week, and I don't really want to talk too much about politics. Ben Carson made some statements that were interesting, but we're not going to talk about that. John Boehner resigned. I'm curious to see how that's going to play out if we have to have a special election. Because if I understood correctly, he's resigning altogether. He's out, not just as Speaker of the House, but as a House member. Am I understanding that correctly? Is that how you understood it? Did you keep up on that?
I watched a little bit, but I don't really.
You don't really know
I'm
yet.
not
Okay.
sure.
Well, hey, anybody that knows what's going on, I guess you can tell me. We'll figure that out. This week, the big plan was to do faith-based movies for this week. But then the Pope came to town, and I guess I should have known that, but I didn't realize it was this week that he was coming to town, and so we're going to talk about the Pope's visit. And next week, we will talk about faith-based films, what they mean, are they good, bad, indifferent? Maybe you have an opinion and you want to say, hey, Scott, faith-based movies stink. Although I went and watched last week, we went and watched the new one by the two brothers. I can't think of their name right now.
Kendrick
War
Brothers.
Room. Yeah, the Kendrick brothers. I like their stuff. I've seen it from the very beginning. War Room. You went and saw it too, didn't you, Nate?
I did, yes.
You did.
I was pretty impressed.
I was impressed. It was probably their best movie to date as far as acting goes. The writing was, as always, very good. I think they've always done a nice job on writing the movies. And it was, I'll be honest, I also went to the drive-ins. We have drive-ins where I live here, and the two movies I watched were not nearly as good as War Room. I saw The Visit, M. Night Shyamalan. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. His early stuff was so good. It was so good. What happened to that? It was a joke, The Visit. It was a joke. It was just... The best part of that was the acting by the two kids. But let's digress. Let's move on to the Pope. Here's what I find interesting. When you watch the news and you watched about the Pope's speech, the news really emphasized how he talked about climate change. I don't know, did you keep up with that at all, Nate? Did you see that?
I watched a little bit, and it did seem to be like the main focus.
The main focus. Did you know that he actually spoke on other things other than that?
Oh, really?
Yes, and I did some reading and I found out he spoke about a lot of others. That was not even his main thrust. That was kind of a side note. Kind of like how it was a side note. I was talking about The Visit and that stuff. That was a side note. That wasn't even his main thrust. It wasn't even his main topic. He actually, and I'll put a link to the article that I read this in so you guys can read it. This is what I read. It says, the Vatican official who wrote the first draft of the papal encyclica has said that abortion, the death penalty still hold primacy over climate change as issues of the Catholic Church, despite the Pope's ringing call on action for the environment. As the Pope moved on to New York for the second leg of the U.S. tour. It says here, kind of continues on, personal issues of life, death still came first in the church. Note, notwithstanding the Catholic leaders' effort to get the world leaders to fight on climate change and poverty. And that's what's interesting is he talked about the poverty issue, he talked about abortion, he talked about other things, but it seems like climate change was all the media talked about. if I am reading this right, the first draft was really focused on that and focused on helping the poor. And why should we even care about what the Pope says? We're not Catholic. But the Wesleyan, and I'll put this article, the Wesleyan Church, our district, not our district, but our national leader who's over all the churches, Dr. Lyons went and saw him, wrote a really nice article on it. I'll put a link to that below here too, so you guys can read it. And we have, doctrinal, we have issues with that, but we all serve Christ. And as we talk about this idea of what is our responsibility of, it's just not just followers of Christ. I think this is a responsibility of all mankind, whether you follow Christ or not, and that's taking care of other people, taking care of the poor. And I think the church in this country is getting back into that mode, but we kind of let the government take over years and years and decades ago, and we never really kind of picked up the slack from that. And do you feel the same way, Nate? Am I the only one that feels this way, that we as a church should maybe do more as Christians, try to help with helping the poor in this country, not just around the world?
I would definitely say so.
Yeah. Christ, he was talking to the Jewish people here in Luke 10, beginning with verse 30, and he had this illustration that he told. I often like to think a lot of these illustrations that Christ told, because he's God and he knows all things, or probably a lot of them were more than just parables. They might have actually happened. I could be wrong in it, but I just like to think that way. Maybe I'm the only one that thinks that way. But he says this, beginning with verse 30. It says, Jesus replied with an illustration. A Jewish man was traveling on a trip from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by bandits. They stripped him of his clothes and money, beat him up, and left him half dead beside the road. By chance, a Jewish priest came along, but when he saw the man lying there, he crossed the other side of the road and passed him by. A temple assistant walked over, looked at him laying there, but he also passed by on the other side. Then a despised Samaritan came along, and when he saw the man, he felt deep pity. Kneeling beside him, the Samaritan soothed his wounds with medicine and bandaged him. Then he put the man on his own donkey and took him to an inn, where he took care of him. The next day, he handed the innkeeper 2 pieces of silver and told him to take care of the man. If his bill runs higher than that, he said, I'll pay the difference the next time I come here. Now, which of these 3 would you say was a neighbor to the man who was attacked by bandits? Jesus asked. Let's think about it. Because Christ used the Samaritan. He said two Jewish people walked right by him, and he said this Samaritan, and the Jews despised the Samaritans, and that's why I think he used that. But are we as Christians doing all that we can to help the poor? And I think there's a lot of things that we can do. We can give money, but I think in some ways, I think we give money, and that's an easy thing to do. Some people are like, well, I don't have a lot of money. But isn't that the easy thing to do? Don't you think that's kind of the easy thing to do, just to give money, Nate?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What if we actually started seeing where we could help in a local soup kitchen, seeing what we could do there? And I know that maybe for me, that would be very difficult because of my job and jobs. But we need to kind of look and see what can we do in our own neighborhood. Is there, somebody we can maybe deliver food to, cook them food, invite them over? Who do we know in our own local churches that may be struggling, and how can we help them? What can we do to show kindness to people? Now, the Pope is known as the People's Pope. And he's focused on a lot of the same issues I think the church is focused on, and I think we need to kind of step it up, not just as a church, but as people, to step it up and start being more humane to people. It's so easy to be jaded in this world. It's so easy to just look and say, look at that individual over there, just that lazy bum, that drug addict. It's so easy to look at people and judge them, but that's not our job. That's not what we're here for. And I think the Pope is trying to point that out. We need to, as a church, as people, to be out helping other people and not just be focused on ourselves. And it's so easy to be focused on us. It's so easy to say, oh, yay, look at me, I'm going to do what I want to do and go off and just ignore what's going on in this world. And it's easy to say, well, at Christmas time I give this, but what about the rest of the year? Are we giving throughout the year? Are we trying to help others throughout the year? Or are we just focused on us? It's, just me. Maybe it's just me. It's just my thoughts. So that's kind of the main thrust. I think the Pope brought out a lot of good issues. It's nice of him to come and visit us. This is the first time he's ever been here that I know of.
Mm-hmm.
For this Pope, the Pope before him came here, didn't he?
I'm trying to think. I think he may have.
He may have, because I remember the Pope Mobile.
Yeah.
It was great. I was watching a news article about the Pope, and he stopped the motorcade that he was in, got out, and went to a young boy who had cerebral palsy and prayed over him and blessed him. What a wonderful gesture there. I mean, he didn't have to stop. He didn't have to do that. How many times do we just stop to do something kind,
Mm-hmm.
Interrupt our day to do something kind. And he's not just saying things. He's not just out there saying it. He's actually doing it. I mean, it would have been easy for him to just wave and move on, but he stopped, he went out, prayed over the boy. Obviously, John Boehner had a very emotional time with the Pope. I read about that. So that was exciting. It was exciting there. And so glad to see that. And I think we can really learn a lot. And we need to try to be better people, be better Christians, be more Christ-like, and be focused on helping those who need help and taking the time to reach out and just do some kind acts. Let's do some honorable mentions, huh? Let's do that. The first one, I read an article in the Huffington Post. I like the Huffington Post. I put it on my Flipboard. Do you have Flipboard, Nate?
I do have Flipboard.
I just got into it this week. I've never used it. It's a pretty neat app. The website's not so great if you use it, but if you've got a phone, you've got it, and I've got different things tagged. It's how I run into a lot of good articles, and the Huffington Post is on my Flipboard, and I flip through it, and I've always enjoyed. They have some interesting articles in there, but one was on critical thinking or critical spirit. Have you ever thought about that, Nate?
I'm not sure.
Well, this is the writer described critical thinking. They described it as this, and once again, I'll put the link down below so you guys can read the article. But it was talking about how a lot of times people think they're critical thinkers, but in all reality, they're just critical, and they cut people short. But what is critical thinking? They describe critical thinking listens to an idea, it holds the idea up to the light like a gemstone being evaluated by a skilled jeweler. It tests and probes and tells the truth, but with an eye towards discovering potential. When it sees a flaw, its first impulse is to try to polish it, to take what's good about the idea and improve upon it. It resists the urge to demolish and discard too quickly. Crucially, critically thinking is the least natural towards the person who brought forth the idea. On good days, it is generous towards that person, perhaps even grateful that they had the courage to bring their idea out into the open. It's not only allows the calf to stumble about, it puts it hand under the calf and shoulder and helps her walk. So basically, a critical thinker here's an idea, and instead of just saying, nope, we're done, that idea is not that great, how many times do you have an idea and that's what somebody says, oh, that's a horrible idea, and it says, instead they take that idea, they look at it, they study it, they look at all the options, and they try to say, now how can we improve it, how can we work with it, it sounds great, let's see what we can do. Now a critical spirit is different. Rather than focusing on the potential of an idea, it focuses on the flaws, just waiting to pounce on it and destroy it. Whereas yet, critical spirit evaluates the person who brought it forth through the lens of an unfinished idea. Inwardly, the critical spirit says, I have way too much to bother listening to this clown. I never thought he or she was so bright. That half-baked idea just confirmed my suspicions. I can't wait until they stop yapping. So I like that, yapping. Don't know that word. So they can stop yapping so that I can point out the flaws in this idea. Outwardly, the answer to every question is no, period, end of story. And I think we can take that and maybe we need to become more critical thinking. The idea and the premise behind what we're doing here on this channel is trying to bring some common sense to things and bring some ideas out. And I know there's people out there who think that what we're doing is kind of dumb, and that's fine. You can think that all you want. But we're going to keep working on this. But I want you to think about it. Are you a critical thinker, or are you, anytime you hear an idea, do you just shoot it down? Do you just say, no, it's something to think about? Flipboard, I found that this week. I mentioned that here. I really like that. Honorable mention there. If you haven't seen it, look it up on your phone or your iPad or your Galaxy, whatever you use. Look it up. It's a pretty neat tool to use. You get all kinds of news, different ideas. I've got ESPN on there, the Huffington Post, religion news, things like that. I also just finished up a series here at the church that I pastor on idols, and one of my main resource sources was a book by Kyle Idleman, and the book was called Gods at War. And I really enjoyed the book. It was really, really good. I will write it down in the description, so if you want to get it, you can get it. I use it on my Kindle, is where I have it, so you can get it through Amazon and put it on your Kindle and read it. It is a really good book, really well written. I've enjoyed a lot of Kyle Idleman's books, and so that I think that does it. I think we're done. I don't see anything else here that I want to talk about. Next week we hope to come back. We hope to talk about faith-based movies and do some research on that. If you have any ideas on it, you want to tell me what you think, feel free to let me know, and I might just include it in the talk. Hopefully nothing too big comes up to interrupt that. So we hope to see you then. If you like it, if you like us, you like what we're doing, share us on Facebook, share us on Twitter. I'm not on Twitter yet. I'm not really too sure about the whole Twitter thing. I don't hashtag this and that. I don't get it. Do you use Twitter, Nate?
No.
No? I don't even know. Do you young kids, if you young kids are watching, let me know. Do you use Twitter? Is this something I should get into? Let me know what you think about that. I don't use it. I've got a Twitter account. I've never used it though. I got into it years ago just trying to figure it out and never got into it. Let me know what you think about that. I don't get the whole, why does everybody have a Twitter, Instagram, everything else, but maybe I'm just old. Maybe that's the reason. Let me know what you think. What else we got going on this week? It should be a good week for us, and I'm excited to tell you all about it next week. We've got the new Weekend Rambling. I'm not sure what I think about it yet. It's kind of raw and uncut. I don't really script it like I do this, and I just kind of give some ideas what I think. I'm going to try to get that up probably on Saturday morning, maybe do it on Friday, Saturday morning, something like that. Let me know what you think about that if you watch it. Hit the subscribe button if you like what you're seeing on this channel. Let your friends know. Let's try to get a movement going here. I don't know if we're going to get a movement going, but let's use some common sense, people, some common sense. You guys have a good week. We'll talk to you guys later. It's been fun.
Bam.
Bam. We're done.